Welcome to another episode of the Parra Cave podcast. And now over to your host, Troy Warner, broadcasting live from the world-famous Parra Cave.
And yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Parra Cave podcast. This is the first of the season previews for 2025 of the Parramatta Eels that I will be releasing over the next few weeks before the competition starts. The first game for the Eels is on the 9th of March, which is down in Melbourne at Amy Park, 4:05pm, so cannot wait for that one. The competition proper, the whole NRL, starts on the 2nd of March over there in Las Vegas. But what I'm going to try and do is do some fan interviews about their team, the Parramatta Eels, and my team obviously as well, and get their thoughts on the season ahead. So this will be the first one that I release, and this one was recorded back in January when my guest Chris Ricketts was over in Australia. He lives overseas, and he visited the Parra Cave, and we did a bit of a chat, and we might actually turn that into a bit of a annual tradition, as we mentioned late in the podcast, because I think we did one last year as well when Chris was first on the podcast. So always love catching up with Chris, great bloke. And if you love seeing old time jerseys and the like, not just Parramatta but other clubs as well, check out his Instagram site, Rick's Jersey Bonanza Sequel, I think it's called. Check that one out. Now, these are not jerseys for sale, although you never know, some may be for sale, but generally they're not. They're just his collection that he likes to show off, and there's some beauties in there. He posted the other day 2 Parramatta Eels training shirts from the 80s, which absolutely look outstanding. But this is the first Parramatta Eels season preview. We just run through the usual questions, the ins and outs, where Chris would like to see the Eels finish, and all that sort of jazz as well. So just a reminder, this was recorded back in January, so a few weeks ago now. But over the next couple of weeks, I will be doing some more season previews with fans as well, just seeing if there's any other different ideas from fans as well. So we'll kick it off with this one. So as Hindy says,
get a beer, coffee, whatever you want,
sit back, relax and enjoy, and let's get straight into it. And hello and welcome back to the Parra Cave podcast. And look, I don't know if this is a real early season preview, but I do have a special guest live here in the Parra Cave. He is a great Parra fan and a great mate of mine. He has been on the show before a couple of times now, once live from Las Vegas, that was last year, and also we did an interview, I think, early last year, probably about this time last year. His passion for rugby league and the Parramatta Eels. He's also got another new role, and a shout out to the Cumberland Throw guys as well. I'm sure they won't mind me mentioning them, but a bit of a role on there, writing for them. But anyway, who is it? Chris Ricketts. Welcome to the Parra Cave podcast once again. Great to have you here in the Parra Cave.
Absolute pleasure, Troy. It's great to be back here with you. I look forward to this catch up with you every year now. It looks like it's a tradition for us, so we're going to have to keep this one going.
Yeah, I think we might have to do the January podcasts about the season that was, maybe, and then the season that is. But this one's about the season that will be, hopefully, and 2025, can you believe it, is upon us now. And look, there's been a lot of exciting things happening at Parramatta since we last spoke. Let's start off with the coach. Now, we know Jason Ryles is the coach, and that was done sort of middle to late last year. But from what you have seen on social media and what you've heard from other fans and whatever, what are your impressions of Jason Ryles so far?
Very positive. So obviously with Ryles coming in, it was at the expense of another much-loved coach in Brad Arthur. So a quick shout-out to Brad before we get into the Ryles piece. I think that the Parramatta fan base is divided into two camps around Brad. I think I certainly sit in the camp that he was the right coach at the right time for us. He dug us out of the mire. In 2013, we were an absolute disarray. Bad signings, a couple of wooden spoons on the trot. He did a great job, took us to a grand final, but I also think the time is right. I certainly don't sit in the camp that Brad was a terrible coach or anything like that. I really respected him as a person and as a coach. I think he was a Parramatta man through and through, and his players wanted to play for him. But that said, it was clearly time for some change last year. I think the time was right. And what I've seen from Ryles so far has been very impressive. So we made the grand final in 2022. And since then, our results have dropped off a cliff. So 2023, you could argue we had some bad luck. Maddo should have taken the 4K rather than the suspension and a variety of other things. Mitch was injured, Dillbags was injured, or suspended.
Suspended, yep.
Yeah, a number of bad injury problems. We had, Reg was suspended at a bad time. That was 2023, and we narrowly missed the finals in the end. So you could possibly put that down as being an anomaly. They gave him until around Magic Round last year, and the results were just getting worse and worse. I think what was apparent to me was that the Brad Arthur kind of crash and bash down Main Street, chase the collision, that sort of ethos is maybe not as well suited to the modern game. If I think about one game that typified this for me, it was Darwin last year when we played the Dolphins.
Yep.
And we've got a team full of huge middles, Junior and Reg and Sean Lane and all these guys. And their players are players like Max Plath, for instance. Nuggety, versatile, fast around the paddock, speed all over the place. Guys like the Hammer in the back line, just incredible to watch. And we led, I think, 8-4 or something at halftime, give or take. And they ran us off the park in the second half. And that was unfortunately a little bit of a precursor to what was to come in the coming weeks. As the league got younger and faster, it was clear that our team or our method was maybe a little bit outdated. There's still a place for great middles. We saw Reg win the Thornett medal last year, and I think deservedly so. He was a brilliant player for us. But what's clear for me with Ryles coming in was that he identified a need for change. He obviously took the Parramatta job because he thought there were some pieces there that he wanted to work with. A big junior base, plus one of the best halves combinations in the competition. So when Mitch and Dylan are both fit, we would have a top 5 halves combination. I think that's probably
definitely
objectively the case. He's come in and clearly said, all right, these are the pieces I want. These are the pieces I don't want. I'm going to change the way we play the game. And he's moved very quickly. He's made a lot of changes quickly. And what he has done is add a lot of pace to our team, and not just pace on the edges, but also through the middle. I think I'd be curious to see where he plays Maddo and Sean Lane this year. Guys like that could potentially be shifted to the middle. I think Junior's, from all reports, stripped about 15 kegs. So Junior's looking like he's going to run a marathon sometime next week.
And a shout out to Junior as well. Congratulations. He got engaged over in Bali last week, I think it was. So congratulations to him.
And maybe he just wanted to look good in his suit, but I suspect that maybe part of it is that he wanted to play the way Ryles wants to play. So congrats to Junior. But he's gone out there very quickly on the player market. He's found a number of faster players. We already had Lomax coming. But the one thing I'll say about Ryles is he clearly has a plan. He's looking to execute that. He's brought in the new coaching staff. It's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing how it all now manifests itself in terms of on-field performance.
Yes, much indeed. All right, well, let's talk about a few of those ins. We'll start off with the coaching staff, first of all. Some fresh new faces. Some of them have a little bit of a connection to Parramatta at the moment. Sam Mower, defensive coach, has done some coaching over in England. Catalans, I believe, I think. Nathan Brown is back as well. And Mark Gasnier as well. That was a bit of a, far left sort of spin out sort of signing. I think just in an advisory sort of a role, so a couple of days a week, I guess, to work with the outside backs. What are your thoughts on that one?
Gaz coming in to be a coach, an assistant coach at Parramatta was not on my bingo card this year. I think I didn't expect that, didn't see it coming, but I think, he's one of the best outside backs we've had in the last 25 years. So if he can impart some of that knowledge onto the guys, then, absolutely, it's going to be great to have him. And I think he has some connection to Lomax as well from their time. Obviously, they may not have overlapped as players, but in and around the club, I'm sure there's some connection there.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously Nathan Kalis as well. I think he's a New South Wales Cup coach, but also working with the NRL team as well. So
Scotty Wisemandel as well there.
Yeah, used to be at Parramatta as well a long time ago and has done some pretty successful things in rugby union. And and some of their social media content that Parramatta have put out has explained it pretty well as well, introductions and the like. Let's get into the ins and outs of the Parramatta Eels for season 2025, and look, we've got some pretty exciting ins. Let's first of all talk about the losses, though. Let's talk about the losses. There's a hell of a lot of those. We'll just talk about the main ones. I think we don't want to bore people too much because I guess every podcast has gone through all those as they're left. But look, the 3 or 4 main ones: Clint Gutherson's gone to the Dragons, Micah Sevo over in the Super League, Blaze Talangi to the Panthers. We knew about Ethan Sanders going to the Raiders, Matt Arthur going to the Knights, Regan Campbell-Gillard up to the Gold Coast Titans. They're probably the main ones there. Is there any of those that you're disappointed to see go?
Look, Troy, I think I actually wrote a long piece about this on the Cumberland Throw about Gutho. I think you saw it, but Gutho's obviously the main one there, where the bloke bled blue and gold for the best part of a decade for the club. I can understand why this was in the best interest of both parties. As I mentioned, I think it's obvious that Ryles wants to go with more pace. He wants to go with a bit more youth back there. But Gutho was still contributing at a very high level last season for us. However, when you're a football player, you only have a limited shelf life. The Dragons were willing to offer him similar money to what he's on now for another 3 years. So good luck to Gutho, and send him on his way with all the best. Hopefully not against Parra when we play him in April, but obviously sad to see Gutho go. And then also Reg, he was our best player last year and was rewarded with the Thornett medal. So, again, another good thing for him in terms of he got a good deal with the Titans, so you don't begrudge him any of that. That's modern rugby league. But both those guys contributed heavily to the Parramatta success over the last sort of 4 or 5, 6 years. So in that respect, I think, sad to see both those guys go. Blaze Talangi, I won't talk about too much, other than to say I'm very impressed with how we recovered, because that was a pretty dark space when we lost him last year. I think Sanders, you could understand, he wasn't going to play behind Moses and Brown, and so you can't hold these kids back. So that one, there's no way that they were ever going to retain him unless they were going to move on a more established half, which wasn't going to happen. Talangi was one they tried to keep. It was pretty grim when he left and Matty Arthur left, and I think Charlie Geimer asked for a release around the same time. But having watched Talangi play, I'm actually comfortable with the exchange, given we wanted to play him at fullback, and now we're getting Isaiah Ayongi to play fullback, who is a more established, more experienced fullback. I think this is going to work out well for all parties, because Blaze can go and play 5'8" for the Penrith side. Hopefully he misses as many tackles for them as he did for us. But I was also pretty pleased to see that we were able to retain his younger brother, Ryder Talangi, which you would have thought he would have gone once we lost Blaze. So that was a good bit of retention, I felt, to keep him.
Australian schoolboy.
Yeah, Australian schoolboy, big future. So, that one's good for me. But, yeah, if we're talking about the guys leaving, those would be the main ones. And I think a lot of the younger guys you can understand. Matty Arthur, you understand. Blaze Talangi, you understand. You kind of get it. But we've started to now retain a lot of the guys we want to keep, which is, I think, important.
Do you think Blaze and Ethan will be back one day at all? It's always hard to say.
It's very hard to say. Yeah. What's Mitch now, 29, 30?
Yeah, I think turns 30 this year, I think.
Yeah, Dylan's still pretty young. I mean, he's still only, I think, 24. He's been around since the dawn of time. He was probably playing since he was in nappies in first grade. But so, Dillbags will most likely, hopefully, have for a number of years to come. modern halfbacks, I mean, Cherry Evans is still playing at 36, and he still looks like a top-shelf half. So, I mean, if we've still got Mitch playing at the same level he is now in 5 years' time, then, yeah, someone like Sanders is probably never coming back.
Yeah.
It becomes a money game, doesn't it?
Oh,
and timing.
100%. All right, well, let's get into the gains. And you mentioned Isaiah Iongi there, who will be playing fullback, no doubt. He's got a bit of competition, apparently, though. Joash Papali'i from the Bulldogs. He seems like a bit of a live wire from what I've seen on social media. Quite a funny guy. Jack Williams from the Sharks, and obviously the two Dean Hawkins from the Rabbitohs as well. Bit of halfback, halves, hooker, maybe backup. And obviously the two big ones. Zach Lomax, we knew early on last year, and Josh Addo-Carr as well. So let's start with Josh Addo-Carr. What do you make of the Josh Addo-Carr signing? Are you happy with it? Can you not wait until he plays in round 3 against the Bulldogs at Combank Stadium?
I'm stoked to see what he can bring. I mean, he has something to prove. From all reports, he was earning about $600,000 a year at the Bulldogs, and we're getting him for about half of that. So if we get Fox anywhere close to his best, then that represents an amazing piece of business. $300,000 in the modern game is not a big contract for a guy that's a representative quality winger. So if we get that version of Fox, which I suspect we'll get something close to it, then I think it'll be an absolute win for the Parramatta side.
And the good thing about his contract is, I think anyway, and probably many Parra fans as well, is that it's a club option in 26. So you're 100% right there. He's going to hit the ground running, I think, and want that contract for 26.
Yeah, he's obviously had a few off-field issues, but this becomes a very serious financial consideration for him at this point, and I think he obviously trusts Jason Ryles from their time together at Melbourne. So I think Ryles has a good chance of getting the absolute best out of him and milking every last bit of Josh's ability out of him over the last few years of his career, hopefully. So he's not that old still. I think he's still younger than 30. So there is a good chance that we could get a good few years out of him. I hope he can get his head straight off the field, but certainly he's making all the right noises so far.
Yeah, and the other big one, Zach Lomax. Where does he play in 2025? Or where do you want him to play in 2025?
Those are two different things. I think he's going to play in the centres.
Yeah, I think so too.
I don't think there's any chance he's going to play on the wing unless it goes really badly to start the year. So his fingers crossed that he stays in the centres, because that'll probably mean that Parra's winning. It's very difficult to overlook the data from what we saw last year. When he moved to the wing for the Dragons, he was the best winger in the world.
Yeah.
The meters on his kick returns, he's a huge aerial threat. And when you've got a halfback with arguably the best kicking game in the competition, it's hard to ignore the potential benefit. Whether or not he can do that from the centres, I'm not sure. He's going to be a little bit closer in. We did see Mitch kicking for him when they were playing for Australia quite a bit. He just seemed to look for him. Yeah. Either that or Zach seemed to just be sniffing around like a bloodhound, just trying to find the ball every time. So I think he'll end up playing in the centres. I suspect that he'll be good wherever he plays, but it's hard to ignore the fact of how good he was on the wing last year for the Dragons, New South Wales and Australia.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. I would put him on the wing, but I guess you got to keep a player happy, and maybe Jason and obviously Jason and Zach have had that conversation about where they're going to play and why he came to the club. Dean Hawkins, good, as I mentioned, good little backup there for the halves, hooker as well. Played a little bit of first grade at the Rabbitohs, so that's a good backup, because one thing that we did, I guess, suffer in recent years is a lack of depth in certain positions. So not a superstar player, but will get a job done. Jack Williams as well from the Sharks. That he's an exciting one as well. Has played a lot of first grade at the Sharks. And as you said before, probably in that mould that Jason Ryles wants in terms of a smaller forward, faster forward. Excited to see him play. Yeah, look, I think with all these games, it's going to be a good competition for spots. Who out of the new gains are you most excited to see in 25?
Just one you didn't mention was also Ronald Volkman, who came over, and I think
train and trial deal.
He was a very bright young talent, and then unfortunately had a major injury when he was about to sign for the Dragons, and it kind of went sideways. I think between him and Hawkins, one thing we saw last year is that if there was ever a problem with Mitch or with Dylan, then we really lacked depth, I'd say. So Dejan Arce, I think, performed reasonably well. I think he'll be very good over in Super League this year. I think he's at Castleford is where he's gone to, but I think he did okay, but he's not an organising half, and you lose a bit there. And I think once we lost Sanders, he went out of the reckoning. I think it's going to be good to have some halves back up, because if Moses ends up playing rep footy again, and fingers crossed he doesn't get injured, but if that were to happen, we need some backup there, because we really fell off a cliff without him last year. Really, the guy I'm most excited or maybe most intrigued about is Oyongi. I mean, that's such an unknown. He played one game of first grade last year against Newcastle. He looked absolutely brilliant in it. I think he might have been man of the match on debut, which is incredible. And just kind of like the Ethan Sanders thing, you can understand why he'd want to have a shot at first grade. Sitting behind Dylan Edwards and potentially Dane Laurie in the depth order wasn't going to be acceptable for a player of that talent. Whether or not he is going to be a plus for us compared to other fullbacks in the comp, it's the most stacked position in the entire competition. I mean, you look at some of the amazing fullbacks in the comp: Dylan Edwards, Trebojevic, guys like Walsh, Latrell, all these players, Gutho. He is unproven compared to those guys, but if his ceiling is as high as those guys, I mean, you see guys like Reece Walsh come on the scene every year. Look, Keanu Kinney was a good example last year at the Titans. Yeah. No one had heard of him outside of the Tweed area before about halfway through last season. By the end of the year, he was everyone's second favourite player. He was just 5'0", charging through gaps, throwing himself into everything, electric pace. So there's no reason why that couldn't be Oyongi, and Ryles has obviously identified something in him that is a good opportunity, or thinks he'll be a good addition to the squad. So I'm excited.
Yeah, I like what you're saying there. The bit of mystery there about how he plays and performance, and it'll be really good to see how the other teams handle him, I guess, and how he goes. But yeah, of those gains, I'm just really excited about all the speed that we're going to have in the team, because we have lacked it over the last few years. Now, the current crop of Eels that have been there for, obviously last year and a few years probably before that as well, who do you think will be under the most pressure to probably either get a first grade spot or retain their first grade spot come round one?
I think there's a few guys there that were very much Brad Arthur signings. And we've seen that Ryles isn't afraid to tear up that script and do his own thing. I suspect, without any proof of this, that there are a couple of guys that are only there now because they couldn't shift the contracts. And I think that's guys like Sean Lane. There was some interesting stuff around Maddo as well. He was kind of on the chopping block, or he was being shopped around, and then he wasn't. He had a good game, and all of a sudden Ryles said, okay, maybe we keep him. But I think guys like Lane, Madison, those guys are on big contracts. They haven't had good seasons the last couple of years. I think those are the kind of players where they're really playing for their Parramatta futures right now. I hope that means that they'll have big years. Sean obviously coming back from a broken jaw a couple of years ago. He started a bit slow coming back. I think last year when they started playing him in the middle towards the end of the year, when Trent Barrett moved him even to starting prop a little bit, I think at that point we started to see a little bit more out of him. So I'd like to see a bit out of those guys. I think they're under a lot of pressure. Junior is an amazing player. I think most would probably think his best is behind him. But the fact that he's come back in such incredible shape, I hope that he's going to have a late career flourish where he can, again, be a rep player, lead Parramatta from the front. We've lost a lot of experience. He's lost his bookend partner, Reg, and he's lost Gutho. we really need guys like Junior to lead on the field, because I suspect it hasn't been formally announced yet that Mitch Moses will be the captain.
No, I was just about to ask you about that as well.
Okay.
With Gutho moving on, there are a few names being mentioned. Obviously, Mitch, Junior. There's probably a couple of others, but those two are probably the highest in the tier. Who do you think will be announced as the captain?
I think it'll be Moses, and then I think we're really going to need Junior's on-field leadership as well there, because Mitch is a brilliant player and probably the on-field general most of the time anyway. I think Gutho was always barking orders from the back. Without having Gutho there, we're going to need Junior to really show leadership. We've got some young players in the forward pack now that we haven't had previously. A few hard heads as well, like Joe O, who did a great job last year as well. But I think it'll be Moses. I think Ryles is going to hand him the keys to the Ferrari, to the team, and say, righto, this is your team, see where you can take it. So I think it'll be Mitch Moses as our best player and captain and half.
In having Mitch as the captain, does that mean that he relinquishes the goal-kicking duties and that goes to Lomax? I mean, it's a nice problem to have, two sharpshooters in the team.
Yeah.
Or what would you do? Who would you pick?
I actually think Mitch is a better kicker than Lomax, but we saw in Origin and for Australia that Lomax was the preferred kicker. So I suspect that'll be the case, that Lomax will continue to kick. I mean, they're both average sort of high 70%. But you're right. Going from having Moses as your main kicker and then Gutho, who was a bit hot and cold, he could kick a few good ones. And, if you need someone to bang him over.
A few bad ones too.
Look, I mean, the last couple of years we've lost 2 games after the buzzer with very kickable penalty goals. I think Mitch missed one, and then Gutho missed 1 or 2 last year, which were basically to win games, and they were maybe 20 metres in, 35 metres out each time, and just... If I see another penalty awarded from a short kickoff, which I'll have PTSD. But yeah, I think it's going to be good to have 2 sharpshooters. I think we can't lose either way.
Yeah, I think Zach will be the goal kicker, and I think that just eases a little bit of pressure off Mitch as well, especially if he does become captain. I mean, he's sort of almost a captain anyway on the field anyway. The halfbacks usually are, but just have that C next to his name.
We just need to get more than 8 games out of Mitch this year. Or whatever.
100%.
It's so crucial for our chances. So if things like kicking goals could potentially create an injury in some way or whatever, just give him as little to do as possible. Anything that's not essential, just, yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Out of the old... or when I say old, the current crop and the new crop, who is the player that you're most excited to see, and who do you think will have to step that up this season? You mentioned Sean Lane and Junior and Maddo as well, but who do you think will need to really branch out and step it up and have a big year?
I think a guy that I'm excited to see really take a bit of a leap is Will Penasini. He didn't have his best. He had a bit of a down year last year. He was rewarded with a big contract at the start of the year. He's got his brother kind of knocking on the door now as well. Yes. He's back from an ACL, so it'd be good to have Richard back as depth for us. He's just a young player coming through, but I'd like to see what Will Penasini can do. We've seen Swatali'i, his mate from high school, go on to be a pretty strong player at the Roosters, and then just an instant sensation at the Wallabies, which probably speaks more to the quality of world rugby than anything else. But I'd like to see Will Penasini take a similar leap, because I think he has a lot of potential. Very strong in the tackle, good defensively. Not the quickest around, but I think there's potential that he could be a rep player in the future. So I'd like to see what he can do.
Well, let's hope Gaz can do some magic with Will and see what happens in 25. Let's quickly touch on the draw. You obviously had a look at the draw. What are your thoughts on the draw, and which game are you most excited to see this year? This year.
So it's always hard with the draw, because you're looking at past results as an indicator of future performance, and that very rarely ends up being the case. I think if you look at some of the teams that you may think are going to be pretty good, they may end up being ordinary. and the inverse of that is true as well. You might have a few ordinary-looking teams that end up being very good. I don't think anyone would have picked Parramatta and Souths to be two of the bottom three teams last year, but that happened quite quickly over the space of a couple of years. So you just don't know what that means in terms of. I don't think there's an easy draw or a hard draw. I think you can't look at it based on the teams you play, but you can look at it on the way you play. Okay. And I think first thing that jumped out to me is finally we have our last game in Darwin. So I think, look, it probably served a purpose 10 years ago. We needed a bit of cash as a club. I'm glad it's done now.
And against Canberra as well. So
yeah, so
Southern team.
Ricky's already started complaining about it.
Yes.
So I hope it's -3 in Canberra that week, and then they have to fly up to 32 degrees and 100% humidity. And Ricky, you can't tell the perspiration from the tears on his face, but. So that's going to be a big game. Obviously, there's a couple of games of some of our new players coming. We've got Fox making his first game against the Dogs in round 3. That's going to be a huge game.
Yep.
We've got a game in early April, I think, which is going to be Gutho and Zach Lomax playing against each other.
Round
with different,
5,
yeah. Different colours on. I think, Troy, that I live overseas, so I'm only going to get to one game this year, I think. I'll be in Vegas. But I will go to the Easter Monday game. I go to it every year, so I'm looking forward to that. And Easter Monday, even though the Tigers have won the last 3 wooden spoons, it's always a bit of a lottery. You just don't know what's going to happen. I mean, Jackson Hastings, who's a mediocre first grader at the best of times, kicked a field goal from about 40 metres out, and then the year before that, we put 50 on it. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, they seem to really step it up for Easter Monday game, don't they?
They do, and a lot of my mates are Tigers fans, and it's kind of, for me, Parramatta and the Tigers, it's the biggest derby. I know for you it's probably the Panthers living out here, but for me, I grew up in an area where it was either Balmain or Parramatta fans, and that was all there were. So that's the biggest rivalry. My mates are basically split down the middle, Parramatta and Tigers, I love that game. I always love to get to it. Look, outside of that, I think... Magic round, we've got the Sharks. It's going to be nice to play on early in the
first
week.
Game,
I think we're on 6:00 Friday.
Yep.
So that'll be nice. Outside of that, look, when we win the minor premiership against Newcastle in the final round, I think that's going to be the other one. But I don't look at any other games and just think, well, I'd love to play them. Although Melbourne in round 1, it feels like you're kind of. A hobbit walking into Mordor trying to take down the Dark Lord Sauron or something. It feels like the impossible task. But every now and then you just end up with a Frodo Baggins type who could potentially just pull off the impossible. But I am excited to see what they do there.
The thing I like about it when I saw the draw released was our start. Obviously the first game of the year, round 1, Sunday 9th of March, is a tough one down in Melbourne. Can we beat the Storm and break the 21 year, I think it is, record that Craig Bellamy has? We almost got close a couple of years ago at CommBank, Jermaine Hopgood's first game for the club, but Harry Grant got us in Golden Point, unfortunately. Can we break it, round 1?
Look, we're probably going to start about $5 outsiders with the TAB, but bet with your head, not over it. But what I would say is it's possible. I think no one knows what they're going to see out of Parramatta this year. It could be absolutely brilliant, or it could take a while to gel. I think I have full faith that Ryles is going to have a competitive team on the park by the end of the season. Just don't know if it's going to be immediate or not. And I think the trials will give us some indication, but it's a tough one to go and beat Melbourne in Melbourne. But, for the purpose of this, let's just say yes, probably win by 20 plus.
20 plus, I love it. But yeah, the other thing that stood out for me, obviously, was those first 4 games, same time, 4:05 p.m. on the Sundays. 2 of them are home games. 2 of them are away games, and then 2 home games on Saturday 3 p.m. against the Dragons, and then 7:35. Or the home game, when I say that, it's up in Darwin. The Easter Monday game is the Tigers' home game this year at CommBank. We actually do play a lot of games at CommBank this year, which is good because the Panthers are playing there this year as well. So hopefully the Blue and Gold Army can get out there outnumber the Panthers fans at CommBank. But yeah, I think it's pretty reasonable in terms of when we play, and there's a lot of good breaks in there. I don't think there's any 5-day turnarounds, which is good. Obviously, there's 2 Monday games. I think there's only 2 Thursday games as well. The rest are Fridays. I think there's only 1 or 2 Friday 6 p.m. games, and one of them is a Magic Round. But the rest are pretty reasonable times. And
if you compare that to 2023, where we seem to play 3 weeks in a row at the start of the year, we played the team coming off the bye.
Yes.
So the teams that had 14 days to prep for us, they were all fresh, and we just got hammered by all of them.
I think the Panthers, the Roosters, and Manly, I think it was.
Something like that, yeah. So we haven't been screwed over like that again, thankfully.
Yeah, that's it. That's for sure. So, obviously, the 2 Tigers games you'll be interested to watch as well. But living overseas, you'll be catching the action, no doubt. Is there any other games that you're really looking forward to watching?
The Doggies on Easter Monday, it's always a big occasion. So any of those sort of public holiday games I just love to watch. But I think outside of that, look, I mean...
It just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, I just watch every game. Yeah. So, when you're living overseas and you're watching every game, almost every game on TV... You know, they're all big games, and they're all the same when they're coming through your TV screen. It's a bit different to when you're sitting there in a crowd of 40 or 50,000 versus a crowd of 8,000 against the Gold Coast or something like that. So it's for me, I love watching all the games, and I'll watch all of them. I definitely put in a few fake meetings in my calendar on a Friday lunchtime so I can watch the Friday night kickoff and things like that, just to try and make sure I've got some time to watch the blue and gold.
Yeah, nice. What else have we got? We've got you're wearing the 2025 away jersey. Let's talk about merch. The range is out, relatively out for now. Obviously, we'll see later winter stuff come through and the like. But what are your thoughts on the home and away jerseys?
I mean, the home jersey, as you know, there's a 2-year deal on all the jerseys, the NRL regulation, that there can only be very subtle changes from one year to the next. So the home jersey only has a couple of very small tweaks from last year, but one very major tweak with regards to the sponsor. So I think if you look at the sponsor change, slightly controversial. We've gone back to the future with James Hardy. There are some people who were very badly affected by James Hardy in the past, so I understand some of that argument. If I can look past that, it's a very familiar looking sight on the jersey. It also makes me think fondly of some times when we won a lot of premierships and were very successful. So in that respect, it definitely feels like a comfortable fit. So the home jersey, the big change being the sponsor, it's worth buying for me. But the big one is the away jersey, and we've gone from, I think, 4 years in a row of having the white strip to now we have the primarily gold. And I think the current gold jersey, or the new away jersey, is very warmly received by the broader Parramatta fan base in terms of we've gone back to our roots there with the blue and gold home kit and then the gold and blue away kit. And I think it looks great, to be honest. It's very basic. Sort of takes me back to like the 83 kit or some of those early 80s kits. And so I really like it. And I'm wearing it today, and I'm sure you've got it somewhere around as well.
I haven't got the away one yet. I've got the home one, but the away one's on its way. But definitely. I think I'd be happy with it to go back like the old days and just have like reverse strips.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got the away jersey on there. It's predominantly gold, with the blue stripes and blue sponsors, and then just reverse that on the home one. Have blue and then the gold sponsor, gold stripes. That's one thing that Tom from Retro Rugby League mentioned was the stripes on the waist there. He would have liked them to gone all the way around, I guess.
Okay.
Instead of just stop at the sides there. I don't know about that, but it possibly could have been. And the other thing, I probably would have liked myself is the 80s jerseys with that sponsor. The lettering was in capitals. This one's in lowercase. So I would have liked it, and I'm not sure about yourself, but I would have liked it in capital letters.
Yeah, and maybe the big JH there is a little bit more prominent as well, because at the moment it's a bit smaller. But look, I mean, when it comes to Tom, I mean, he's got a keen eye for jerseys. I trust his judgment, but for me, this ticks all the boxes already. It's a very minimal design. It's got a very a small bit of blue with the basic hoops around, and then the primarily gold. It's a nice colour of gold as well. So in terms of the jersey, in terms of the sponsor size, I think it's appropriate now, and it would have been very keenly looked at by James Hardy's marketing people and also the NRL, so I'm sure this is kind of where they've landed. But I agree with you. I think, I used to work for a company that used to buy product from James Hardy, a hardware company, and I remember talking to the James Hardy, my James Hardy rep, the supplier, and he said to me, look, the best bit of business they ever did was the Parramatta sponsorship, because 20 years later it's the only jerseys that people wear. So, people still think of James Hardy as the sponsor. Obviously, the retro ranges started to become more prominent about 20 years ago, and they've really ratcheted it up in the last sort of 5 years. And there's just James Hardy jerseys everywhere. So I figure if people are going to be buying those jerseys anyway, we might as well get paid something by James Hardy for them, because they're getting all that free advertising otherwise. We might as well get some money for it.
It'll be quite an interesting Magic Round this year, because I guess in Magic Round you do see a lot of the retro jerseys come out, but maybe people will be wearing the current season jerseys because it's got James Hardy on it, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Magic Round's a fashion show. All the collectors come out with their best and their oldest kits and the most rare ones, and it's just a bit of a pissing contest.
Well, yeah, that's it. Well, I mean, it's even a chance for myself, being a Parramatta fan, to wear a Parramatta jersey all 3 days. Just different each day.
I'm glad you said a different one, so not the same one for 3 days straight. I wouldn't want to sit next to you on Sunday, Arvo.
Yeah, well, yeah, no. There'd probably be beer stains all over it, and probably a few tomato sauce stains from hot dogs and that sort of like. But look, everyone is, I think, very happy, and I think it's a really hugely popular jersey as well. So another thing that's coming in March 2025 is the Centre of Excellence that is going to be opened up at Kellyville. They've been building that for a few years now. It's nearing completion. That is obviously going to have an effect on the team, and I guess morale and the vibe around the place as well. That's obviously going to be beneficial massively for the team. It's going to be the best centre of excellence in the world. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts about what that's going to bring?
I think it's one of those things where you have to do it because every other club is building their own centre of excellence. I don't know how much of an advantage it will be for us, but I know it would be a competitive disadvantage if we didn't have something similar. Because I think if you look at other teams in the area, like Tigers at Concord and various other clubs, everyone's putting one of these in because it's an area where you can spend money. It's not greater than the salary cap, so it's an investment in the future, and it's usually a real estate grab as well. So I think it's a very positive step for us. I think having a world-class training facility just means that we are going to be a place where players aren't afraid to play. Whereas I think if you're busy training at Richie Benno Oval or something like that, some of these players are going to look at that and think, well, why would I go there on similar money? So you just don't want to you don't want to be at a disadvantage to other clubs. And I think what this will do is it'll bring us up to speed. As you said, the best facility in the world, maybe the universe. We don't know yet. But I think it can only be a good thing because then that becomes a positive experience for the players. And so much of modern player movement comes about their internal communication as well. Obviously, player agents are involved, but a lot of these guys are friends outside of footy. So if they're saying this is a great place to play, then that becomes immediately of benefit to us when we start having negotiations with external players that we're looking to bring into the club. Yeah,
definitely. That'll be a game changer in that respect. And as you said, it's only going to encourage signings to come to the club, which is great news. Indeed, yeah. It'll be a massive day. I think they're going to have a massive community day when it opens. So it'll be a massive day when that opens. And, I can only see it being beneficial for the team and the club and the community as well, because it's a community centre as well. So,
one thing I think... having that space in Kellyville, that it just really entrenches you in that junior area, and it's a huge catchment area for rugby league. So I think it just kind of broadens our base with regards to where we're going to pull players from in the future. And I think that's important to us because we've obviously got some big neighbours down the Great Western Highway, down the M4. In Penrith, they've got a huge catchment area as well. They're building their own stadium. We don't need to talk about the politics behind all of that, but they're going to have their own stadium. We need to make sure we are as compelling as possible if we're going to continue to attract players. You can see there's been a bit of tit-for-tat stuff where we're poaching Penrith players, they're poaching our players. We really are in fierce competition with our neighbours from the west there in terms of junior players. So we need to make sure we have every possible reason for juniors to want to play with us.
Sounds good to me. Now, the all-important question, and there's probably two questions here about the same topic. In 2025, so I'll ask it this way. In 2025, where as a fan do you think Parramatta will finish after 27 rounds?
As a fan or as a level-headed neutral observer of the game? Because I'll answer it as a fan. So I think in a world where everything goes right, if we have Moses and Dylan Brown as our halves for 85 to 90% of the games, I don't think both of them playing every game is realistic, but let's just say we get 20 games each out of them.
Yep, which is what you want.
I think we'll be a top 8 side. Yep. I think that's so much as riding on their health. So I think if that were to be the case, I can see us falling into the back half of the top 8. Maybe in that sort of 7 to 8 range. Where do I think we're going to finish? Well, again, it's so dependent on health. Yeah. But we do have a bit more depth in the halves now. I think we're going to probably come somewhere around that sort of 10th to 12th range. And honestly, after 2 years of regression in terms of our position on the ladder, I think just having, being in the top 8 hunt towards the end of the year will be a win for me. And I think if we can see green shoots, some positive signs where you can really see hope for the future to say, okay, we might have just missed the semis this year, but we came home like a steam train in the back half of the year. Ayongi's playing like a star. If you could see some of, Fox is playing back to his best, if you see all these things happening, then I think that's a successful year, and you can really look to 2026 and say, right, well, now we can probably go out and get a hooker. We can do a couple of other things, and I think we can take a step to being a top 8, if not top 4 side. So, yeah, I know I didn't quite answer the question. But
where do you want them to finish?
Oh, I want us to win the premiership every year. The answer to that.
Yeah, that's a stupid question.
Yeah. And I'd love to win the comp. It's barely happened in my lifetime. I was 4 in 1986, so love them to win the comp. I think if they make the top 8 and we're there at the business end of the season again, I think that's something we can all celebrate. Just to be relevant in September, I think after a couple of years in the wilderness, I think that would be something that I'd be ecstatic about.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm like you. I want them to win the comp, obviously. But, yeah, I think 6th position, I think.
Home semi, that'd be good.
Yeah, home semi, and then anything can happen from there. As you know, from finals, anything can happen. You just got to win every game in finals, especially if you finish 6th. But look, I mean, obviously, anything higher than what it has been the last couple of years will be a major advantage. I just think there's a lot of not expectation. There's probably not expectation. What's that word? I don't know. But like, there's not. There's new players in there that people probably don't know a lot about. We don't know how Jason's going to go as a coach. He's obviously been around the game for a long time, but now he's got the range. So we don't know what type of football he's going to play. Obviously, it's going to be a faster sort of game that he wants to play, which will be exciting to show. So, yeah, anything could happen. The Parramatta Eels did a social media post, I think it was yesterday, on Instagram, about they got all the players to write one word going into the season, 2025, and carry that word into the season. What is your one word for the Parramatta Eels 2025?
Unity, I would say. If I think about what characterised our 2024 season, I think there's a lot of infighting. We obviously moved on the coach, and then that kind of caused a divide within the playing group. Well, I mean, they still played for each other to some degree, but it was clear there were some players who then didn't want to be there. I think Ryles now needs to bring all those guys back together. Off the field, we had this ridiculous, extraordinary general meeting that didn't go through. I know there's probably fans who support that or don't support that, but either way, we just don't need division off the field or on the field. So for me, I think if we're unified, harmonious, I think that goes a long way towards then having on-field success.
Yeah, no, definitely. Unity is a good word. I think Hayden Knowles, good friend of the podcast, he always says connection, connected. So the most connected team is the best defensive team, and the best defensive team wins premierships. I actually said excitement because I don't know what's going to happen. Like, we've seen more signings in the last 6 months than we have in the last 6-7 years, definitely. And we've got the new coach and new coaches, and so excitement for me. I just don't know what's going to happen. We just have to wait and see.
I think you mentioned, what's the opposite of expectation? I think there's some cautious optimism around this team. I think when we had players like Moses Brown, Gutherson, Paulo, Campbell Gillard, all playing for the Kangaroos or playing for New South Wales, etc., you kind of expect that you're going to be challenging for premierships when you have all those good players in the spine, or Reid Marnie, guys like that. Right now, to your point, I think there is excitement around the club. There is some optimism that maybe wasn't there in the back half of 2024. But I think as Parramatta fans, maybe there's a bit of caution there as well. I think for anyone who's been a fan of Parramatta for some time, you realise that you're here for the good and the bad, but sometimes the bad can outweigh the good. So I know I personally just start to really emotionally prepare myself for maybe not having a great year. But then you see what Ryles has done. I mean, I would have felt far worse coming into this year if we just rolled over the same roster and he was saying, right, I'm a new coach, I'm going to get the best out of these players. I think, with players, sometimes, they need a different environment to flourish. And I think the fact that he's made some significant changes, he's kind of cleaned the place up, or at least moved on some of the guys who were part of a losing team last year, and he's tried to bring in some new guys who maybe were part of successful clubs. So I think in that respect, from a cultural perspective, there's every potential that these guys could really do something special. Yeah,
no, can't wait. I think someone said it's under 60 days now until round one, I think. So
who's counting?
Yeah, well, probably you and me.
Yeah.
Probably you and me, but it's as I said, sixth position I'd be happy with, and then anything can happen in the finals. It'd be a bit of a fairy tale if it was 2026 and we did win the comp. It'd be 40 years after our last premiership, but then we'd have the same major sponsor, 40 years.
It would fit nicely.
We've waited. What this year will be 39. What's an extra year?
At this point, just throw them on the pile. It doesn't mean anything to me. I'm just glad that I've got a team that is still in the original format that it was in 1947. I'd be far more upset if I supported the Bears or Western Suburbs or Balmain or St George or Illawarra or teams like that where you've now got to really suck it up and think, well, is this actually a club I can get behind, because it's not what I originally signed up for. So I would happily just keep having a club that's there, community as passionate as Parramatta community, being part of that is almost as rewarding as winning a comp. Not that I can really compare the two, but if we're not winning, I'm I want to win the comp, but I'm also very happy with the team I've got.
Yeah, that's it. Is there anything else we haven't covered over?
No, I think we're solving the world's problems. So
well, yeah, we've done this totally unscripted. We threw a few ideas together before we started. I think I covered them off. I think.
Yeah, we're both sitting there with our summer tans at the moment, and probably watching more cricket than rugby league. So I think it's. I don't think it's been too bad. Hopefully,
that's it. Well, Chris, thanks very much for joining me once again. And as you mentioned, maybe this will become a January tradition, maybe, and we'll preview 2026 next year. But we'll catch up at Easter Monday game.
Yeah.
Even though it is an away game for us, I think so. We should be in the gold away
Perfect.
jersey, same as Magic Round. We're the away team, so we should be wearing that one. The Tigers will have to be in their black, and but we'll definitely catch up then for sure. Safe travels back home, and enjoy the rest of your time out here in Australia, and enjoyed every moment of it.
Yeah, thanks, Troy. Always love being on the show and appreciate the friendship, and always love chatting about the best club in the world with you. So appreciate it, mate. Cheers.
Dylan, how you going,
Russ.
mate? Are you a Parra Cave podcast listener?
I am, bro. It's a great podcast. Everyone tune in. Parra.
Go Parra.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Parra Cave Podcast. See you next time.